At the top of the timeline, we have a text layer that's currently invisible. So click the eye icon to turn it back on. We'll see it's just a small fun headline. Breaking news, the Earth is not orbiting the sun anymore. What we want to do is just quickly solo this so any of the changes we make we can see very clearly. Now I'm just going to zoom into 100% so we have a very clear view of our type. And with the type layer selected, either here in the comp window or down in the timeline, we're going to go up to the Effect menu here at the top of the screen, come down to the Blur and Sharpen submenu, and let's go down and use a directional blur. Now this is quite a handy little tool that allows us to apply what looks like a motion blur, even though it's not actually dependent on the motion of the layer, and then we can also adjust the direction that it comes from. Well, if we randomize the properties here in the effect, we can actually get some really grungy looking text, which is actually a nice effect. So I'm just going to back up a couple of steps there so we don't have any changes here in the directional blur length, but we do want to apply expressions here to both of those properties. So just like we've done in the timeline, all we have to do is hold down the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and click on the stopwatch here in the Effect Controls window to apply an expression for direction. Whilst we're at it, let's come down and also apply one for the blur length. So down here in the timeline, After Effects has just simply added the default script, nothing changes on screen. We can now go in and edit those and simply randomize them. So first off, we'll type in the word random, and because we're dealing with the direction property at this point in time, the direction is based on 360 degrees. So let's agree to give After Effects the freedom to randomize anywhere between 0 and 360 degrees by putting that value in between the parentheses. Hit enter to say OK. Nothing's going to change on screen at this point. Because there is no blur, we can't see the results of a direction change. So come down to the next expression, highlight that, and let's also randomize this up to a value of around 100. Now this will actually go much further than that, but it keeps it a little bit more constrained for now. So if we hit the Enter key now and say OK, we are noticing a slight shift on screen in the blurriness of this text. If we hit the 0 key now and do a quick RAM preview of that, you'll see a more extreme result. After Effects, frame by frame. Remember, all of this script we've done to this point with random is returning a different value on every single frame of our animation. We can now see the finished result. Very wildly animated and grungy looking text. The thing is, if we're trying to read that at some point, it would be nice to have that blurriness slow down or the randomness get a little bit less, and for that we effectively want to animate one of the properties. To do that, we can come down into our blur length expression and just play around with a little bit of mathematics to give us a different result. Currently we're randomizing anywhere between 0 to 100 pixels in blur length on every single frame. Let's try something a little bit strange here. Let's click inside the 100% value we've got and crank it up to 1000 just for a second. Hit the Enter key to say OK and just do a quick preview of that, and you'll notice it's going to take longer to render because it's having to calculate a much more extreme blur, but we're still getting the same craziness that we had a second ago. However, it looks like we've actually made the problem worse. But what I want to do here is, instead of telling After Effects to put a random value on every single frame, maybe we can try and average the script down so every 9th or 10th frame it gives us a result, whilst the rest of the time it stays fairly static. Well, currently at a random value of 1000, this is where all the extreme values are coming from. But if we add minus 900 on the end of there, what's going to happen on average is that 9 out of 10 frames will generate a random number anywhere between 0 and 1000. More than likely that value is going to be less than 1000. If you take 900 off that every single time, we're going to get a much greatly reduced result, and that will help us control our blur value. So a small interesting calculation, but by hitting Enter and then doing a RAM preview, you'll see the results of that. It's nothing like it looked a second ago, especially by cranking up the blur value to 1000, but now we've got more control over it. It looks like just every few frames here or there, there's a small pop as if the text is going out of sync, and this is actually a really nice effect.